Hello students. I'm going to start using screencasts much more often to go over lecture material, so I hope this will be an accessible way for me to communicate with you. This first screencast is going to cover the materials we've looked at earlier in the semester. So it's been long enough since we read some of the peer-reviewed articles that I wanted to quickly remind you of what we have covered already. So I created this short document just providing a few keywords, a few reminders about several of the major pieces of peer-reviewed scholarship we've looked at already this year. So one of the first pieces we looked at was written by Friedman and Thomas, Pet Ownership, Social Support, and Survival Rates After Heart Attacks. Obviously, that article was about domestic animals and the way that they do or do not impact human health, especially related to heart disease. We also looked at Karen Allen's Are Pets a Healthy Pleasure? And I hope you will remember that Karen Allen cites Friedman and Thomas. So she expands upon their research and she tweaks their study a little bit. She uses only stockbrokers because they're in such a high stress profession to try to isolate some additional variables and prove even more conclusively, hopefully, that pets are in fact a healthy pleasure. So she is also looking at domestic animals and trying to measure their impact on human health. Later in the semester, we turned to a couple of articles focused on wild animals. So Skonhoft and Olesen looked at managing a migratory species that is both a value and a pest. This was the article about moose migration between Sweden and Norway and the way that they are valuable in one of those countries and a nuisance or a pest in the other. And it was written by economists, right? Focused on the field of economics, whereas these focused on a natural science, health, biology, I guess you would say. These also in the division of the natural sciences, but much more focused on economics, on math. And then the last piece I wanted to remind you of was the piece by Daniel Fortin and his co-authors, Wolves Influence Elk Movements. And this was a piece focused on wolves in Yellowstone National Park and the way that their pressure on elk movements influence vegetation in Yellowstone National Park. And we got to all learn what a trophic cascade was, and it names the way that a carnivorous predator can influence vegetation patterns in a habitat. And so as I was thinking about keywords to remind you what this piece was about, it is about the way that humans change the environment and change the world. So because humans had eliminated wolves from North America, vegetation changed. Without that trophic cascade in place, some forms of vegetation grew much more abundantly because herbivores were eating other species and nearly eating them out of some habitats. So hopefully that is enough of a reminder to bring back into your brains a little bit of what we've talked about so far in the semester. And the reason that I'm doing this is because we're going to be turning to synthesis almost exclusively in the coming weeks. We're going to be looking for connections between several of the pieces we've read across the semester. So it will be good for you to have them fresh in your mind. And synthesis is going to be really, really, really important for Annotated Bibliography Part 2. You'll have to do some synthesis before you write your overview for that document. And the largest weakness I saw in Annotated Bibliography Part 1 was in many of you forgot or neglected to draw some connections between your sources. It's really, really important that each of your annotations is not an island unto itself, but that you are reaching out and making connections between sources. So there's a very clear connection between these two. Karen Allen takes up the same basic topic and cites Friedman and Thomas, but tries to push into new ground. We could draw a very strong contrast between either of the two up here at the top and the two down here at the bottom. Domestic animals, wild animals. So we're going to be doing much more of that comparison and contrast, much more what we might call mapping the ways that our sources overlap and intersect. So it's really important that you refresh your memory of these sources. Thank you.